than that. It was about the freedoms of every individual.
Folks, anyone with an accurate history book can deduce that the Civil War was about the economics of slavery. The war was fought because folks in the South wanted to retain the right to own people who look like me because it benefited them economically. The blood, sweat, and tears of enslaved people who worked to produce sugar, cotton, tobacco, I mean, the list goes on. It made the people who owned them rich. But in the mid-19th century, a shift of that wealth became more clear in the northern and southern regions of the United States. The North began to thrive in manufacturing, and it industrialized faster than the South. The economics of slavery were no longer the driver of wealth for those in the North, and that's where the abolitionist movements grew. Meanwhile, the South's economy continued to depend on the labor of black enslaved people. And the Northern economy, it began far outpacing the South. Then came the election of President Abraham Lincoln, who held hostile views toward slavery. And that made Southern leaders feel threatened. So what'd they do? Well, initially, 7 Southern states seceded to form the Confederate States of America. Then in 1861, the most costly and deadliest war ever fought on American soil began in South Carolina, when the Confederates fired the first shot with an attack on Fort Sumter. All because Southern states believed owning enslaved people was their right. Now, Nikki Haley, she knows this all too well. After all, she was the governor of South Carolina when the deadly mass shooting happened at Emmanuel AME Church in 2015. That shooting led to the Confederate flag being taken down from South Carolina's state capitol due to advocacy of many in the community and state legislators. Here's what Nikki Haley had to say on that day.
In South Carolina, we honor tradition, we honor history, we honor heritage, but there's a place for that flag, and that flag needs to be in a museum where we will continue to make sure that people can honor it appropriately. But the State House that's an area that belongs to everyone, and no one should ever drive by the State House and feel pain.
Does this sound like a person who does not know what the Civil War was about? I did not think so. It is very important that history is told accurately, because when we deny our nation's terrible truths, they are bound to repeat themselves. Now, when the Civil War ended, folks, the Confederate leaders, they were welcomed back into the fold of the American economy. They met no serious consequences for leading a treasonous effort to take up arms against the United States government. In fact, many had statues built in their honor that stand in places of prominence across our country today. Does that sound familiar? Well, to me, it sounds just like when the orchestrators and the architects and the puppet masters of January 6th, including former President Donald Trump, went home after their attack at the Capitol was over. They went back into American society after inciting rioters who took up arms against the United States government with the plan to assault our democracy. Many are held as patriots by those on the right. And Donald Trump, he could actually be reelected. All this is why we are still dealing with what some would call the vestiges of slavery in this country. Joining me now to unpack this, I needed somebody good. So is the distinguished professor of